Does the perfect training program exist? How many days per week should I do upper body, lower body, for cardio, for functional movements? After coaching hundreds of ladies who lift weights, I'm going to answer this question and share my suggested balance program and, more importantly, the 3 things you need to consider to make sure that it's custom to you. Let's get into it. But first, a quick heads up. Next week, I am hosting the Look Like You Lift Weights Week Challenge. So this is starting, if you're listening to this live, this is starting August 25th, and you can get signed up at the link in the show notes. But this is essentially my week-long challenge where we're going to go over and implement tools with the guidance from me to build muscle, to decrease body fat, and really understand like the strategy and the holistic components behind it so you can feel more confident with an actual strategy. So you can get signed up right now at the link in the show notes, and this starts on August 25th. So I'll see you there. Now, let's get into the question and answer, like, does the perfect training program exist, and what does that look like? So, like I've mentioned, I've coached hundreds of ladies who specifically lift weights and want to look like they lift weights, but they also care about their health, their aesthetics, aging well, like their vitality, functional movement. So I'm going to talk about all of that and share my suggested well-balanced program. But first, before we get into that, it's so much better if you have the framework and the understanding behind the training program, or any training program at that, and really consider these 3 main things. So the first one is that programs are goal specific. Programs are goal specific, meaning your training program that you're going to implement needs to be aligned to the specific goal that you're trying to get out of that training program. If you are listening to this, then you aren't just in the category of like, oh, I just need to like work out to check the box, right? You're beyond that. And so that is that next level of looking at your training program and being like, what, if I do this, if I like put my effort and energy into this, what specifically am I getting out of it? So there are different goals, and there's different training programs for different goals. So these are the buckets of goals that I typically see and would consider. First is aesthetics. So that is how you look, right? Your muscle, the amount of muscle you have, obviously the amount of body fat you had would contribute into that. But really for training, you're using that to build muscle. So how much muscle you have and where do you have muscle? So that's going to be mainly hypertrophy training, meaning that's like you're lifting heavy weights, you're progressing in those. Like I have a whole different episode on that, but that is the first category, aesthetics. The second category is athleticism. Right? This is your, maybe if you're doing CrossFit, this is your clean and jerks. This is your like sprints. Maybe you were a soccer player back in the day. Or this is really any like functional movement that you're like, I want to, like squats would be considered in this because you don't need to do squats to build muscle. But are squats going to be like take you far when it comes to vitality in that positioning and that strength in that positioning? Yeah. So there's a whole ton of different like considerations within athleticism, but that is another category. Another category is health, overall health. Specifically, I'm thinking about cardiovascular health. So that's going to be like your zone 2 cardio, or your maybe like Zumba classes, or your like Pilates class, where in Pilates, you're focused on those stabilizer muscles. So that would be like considered like the health category. And then the fourth one that I would add in here is mobility. And that could just be some form of stretching, but a lot of people in that category that I see would be like yoga. So these are not all inclusive. I didn't give every single example for each category, but I just want to quickly like wrap your head around these different categories. The other thing to consider too is that they all overlap to some degree. So for example, if you're focused on aesthetics and you're focused on building muscle, right, like that definitely overlaps with overall health. That definitely overlaps with being athletic. That definitely overlaps with having mobility, right, because you're gaining strength in that range of motion. So it is not just you're doing one, you're not doing the other. They definitely all overlap. If you're focused on being an athlete, right? If you're doing clean and jerks and you're going super heavy in them, right? You're that overlaps with building muscle. And so in functionality and mobility, so they all overlap, like cardio, right? That is going to help you lift heavier, especially on those leg days. That is going to help you be more athletic. So they definitely overlap, but to a degree. When you think about achieving and progressing in one area, there's just not enough time or ability to recover to achieve every goal in every single category. Which moves in to number 2. So number 1 is programs need to be specific for the goal that you want to achieve. And number 2 is periodization. So there is a difference between making a change in one of those areas versus maintaining in one of those areas. Typically, you're going to want to focus on a goal for 3 to 6 months before you shift into a new goal. You just need enough time in order to make the changes, and then you can go and maintain in that area. So generally, you're going to want to set up your training programs or program to focus on one main goal while you just maintain in the other. So you're going to progress. Maybe let's say, these are a few examples I see. Maybe let's say you're like, okay, I really want to build muscle in my glutes and shoulders. I want to build muscle there in strength there. You're probably then going to focus on hypertrophy training for 3 to 6 months where you're lifting 4 to 5 times per week. And then whatever else you want to maintain, you're adding that on in the free time that you do have. So maybe that's 4 to 5 times per week, you're focused on lifting. And then maybe your other days, if you're like, oh, I also really care about motility and getting that zen, maybe you're doing 1 day of yoga. And then maybe you're like, well, I also care about getting in my cardio for overall health, and I want to still keep in some functional movements. Okay, well then maybe you're doing 4 or 5 days lifting, 1 day yoga, and then 1 day is like a health and athletic day where you're focused on that cardio. So that's just one example. So number 2, periodization, really mapping out over the long term of when you're doing what program, which ties back to number 1 is what is my goal in this moment. Okay, number 3 is fine tuning within your program. And right now when I say program, I'm really thinking about every workout, every effort that you're putting in. How does this fit into every topic that I'm talking about here? So number 3, fine tuning within that program. This is very individualized. It's going to be really challenging for me to share specifics right now, but I'm going to try to go quickly and hit the main ones and then give you an example. But really, this is what I work on with my ladies in Career Shape. We actually, just this week that I'm recording this, we went over the training optimization module and then went through each person of okay, how can we optimize your training as a whole for all of these considerations? So something to consider is how many days per week can you work out? What time do you have and for how long, right? We got to work within your actual schedule. So once you that's the first thing to set, because then everything else is going to be determined off of that. The other thing to consider is how many days per week are you going to lift? Now, if you are newer to lifting, then you can make progress on 3 days per week. If you've been lifting for a while, 3 days per week you can maintain on, maybe even 2, but 2 to 3 days you can maintain on. But if you want to grow off of that, then you're going to need probably either 3 days, but they're long days, or 4 days, or potentially 5 days. How much time? Again, it depends on how much time do you have, but then what's going to be optimal? I would say really 45 minutes to 90 minutes of lifting is going to be what's most typically what I see most optimal. It depends though, again, what your goal is, how long have you been lifting for, and how much can we fit in of that specific goal to progress. Next is what exactly are you doing during that training time? And I'm specifically talking about the lifting time. Are you doing machines? Are you doing barbells? Are you doing dumbbells? And again, what is your training experience? Because that's going to determine how much you can get out of it. And then where are you at? Are you at a place where you've been doing something for a while and you need to learn, you need to go to that next level. We need to fine tune. Or can you get benefits out of just doing some basic movements that you already feel comfortable doing? So this one's super individualized, but for example, I just had someone in Create Your Shape ask about her training program because she wants to fine tune her legs, but she feels limited because she's had a back injury. So injuries, right, are going to play into this too. So we had to review what specific muscles are she trying to grow? What specific training is she doing right now, and what might be a better option? So we ended up, again, specific to her, switching out some of her barbell moves and swapping them out for machines, because she's just going to get way more out of the machines without the risk of injury. Depends too for dumbbells versus barbells versus machines. Machines, you're always going to be able to get that muscle more isolated, so it decreases your risk for injury, and generally you can get more out of it. So as you become more advanced, machines are typically going to be more optimal, but there's still so many things that you can do with barbells or dumbbells. Like, for example, I love RDLs on the Smith machine. That's going to be like the best spot for me because I just feel connected with them better. I do Bulgarian split squats with dumbbells. I do, bicep curls with dumbbells. So there's so much nuance here that this could be a whole episode. But again, this is another part where you can fine tune and get just more individualized with your program. All right, the next is what are your specific shape goals, right? This is number one. Not only are we talking about, like, do you want to build muscle, or how are you prioritizing aesthetics over health, or how are you balancing the two? But then when you're focused on aesthetics, what exactly do you want to change, right? Do you want to focus on defined shoulder caps? Do you really want to build your arm muscles? Do you want to build more of that hourglass figure where you're focused on shoulder caps and glutes, right? Are you focused on quads right now? So for example, this week I coached someone in Create Your Shape, and she said, I grow muscle fast, but she said basically what the training that I've been doing, I realize it's getting me a lot of quad muscle and a lot of anterior delts. And she said, I really want to focus on my back side. So we reviewed her program to be like, okay, well, let's go through and think about how many exercises are you getting in that are going to grow your backside compared to what can we do to just maintain your front side, since you feel good there and you want to prioritize the backside. Another example of this, I coached a client this week on her career with her training. So she works full time, and then on top of that, she is a class fitness instructor. So she's a little limited to what she can do because she's teaching the class along with doing the class. So we had to look at, okay, how many of these classes are cardio based, how many are strength based, and then how much time do you have outside of that, and what is the best decision for her time and effort and energy in that limited time that she has. So we could go through, and based on how long she's been lifting, what her specific goals were at the moment, and just her circumstances, how can we fine tune and massage her weekly schedule to still see progressions. So that's number 3, fine tuning within the training program. So these 3 things you want to consider when you're thinking about what is a perfect training program, and typically that means what is that perfect training program for me right now. Now, after coaching hundreds of ladies, typically the main goals that you guys have when you come to me are aesthetic goals first, and then health in athletic or functional goals. So typically those are secondary, but you still care about them. And you're like, yeah, I want to make sure I'm considering this, but right now I want to change my shape. So here's what I would say is my typical recommendation for a perfect balanced training program. It would be, again, keep in mind, this is an average. This does not mean you go do this right now. This is an average from what I see. You want to take this and you want to individualize it. And keep in mind that this is not optimal. This is my suggestion based on all the components. So this would be 4 days lifting per week, 2 upper, 2 lower. Then 1 day cardio, like zone 2 cardio, and I would pair that with mobility because they just feel so nice together. And then you can have time to do both together. And then one day of either an athletic or like functional training, or maybe it's sprints, or maybe it's a fun class that you like doing. Maybe it's Zumba, maybe it's tennis, maybe it's golf, maybe it's paddle, maybe it's a dance class. Maybe it is, it really is limitless there. Maybe that's when you work out with your friends and you just do like whatever random thing that they're all going to and doing together. So that is what I would say is the most like well-rounded, balanced program. 4 days lifting per week, 2 upper, 2 lower, 1 day cardio mobility, 1 day athletic functional, or like class type movement. So reminder though, this is not optimal, right? If you were training for a bodybuilding show, I would say, yeah, let's remove that athletic day because we want to add in at least another 1 or 2 training days to really get you ready for the show and see more progress. If you're training for a half marathon, I would say, okay, like maybe we take the lifting down to 3 days and then you are running those other 3 days. If you're training for a CrossFit competition, then we're probably going to increase those functional training days and make them more skill specific on the skills that you're lacking. But we're still going to include strength training in all of these because strength training / hypertrophy, muscle building is going to be the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to health, when it comes to athleticism, and obviously when it comes to building your shape. So that is my suggestion, but those are the main things that you want to consider. If you're like, oh, I enjoyed this, I want more of this, then you should definitely join the Look Like You Lift Weights Week challenge that I am hosting next week, August 25th. You can join us at the link and sign up for free at the link in the show notes, and I will see you then.